The Leafs have finally made the crucial change that every Leafs fan has been clamoring for Sheldon Keefe to make, and they did it, and they ultimately got a big win because of it. So we're going to break that down in this episode of Leafs Digest, as well as some injury updates. We have some big updates and some things that some of you may have not noticed about yesterday's game that we're going to be breaking down going forward. So stay tuned for all that in this episode. Before we do, a quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. About 80% of you who are watching are not subscribed. And if you aren't already, make sure to hit that button. We make daily Leafs videos. And Darius, big win yesterday for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Obviously, great to see that against the Capitals. But we have some things to get into today, and they finally made the crucial move that we were all waiting for them to make, and they did so in TJ Brodie, and we called for it in yesterday's afternoon video. You made the post game and kind of discussed it a little bit, but let's break down. Sheldon Keefe spoke out a little bit on TJ Brodie and why they decided to ultimately healthy scratch him for the first time since 2013, and let's just get right into it. You can see here, Maple Leafs TJ Brodie will be a healthy scratch. This was in yesterday's game. That's not attributed to the rest for the first time since January 20th, 2013. And Sheldon Keefe had this to say. He said, Broads knows he hasn't been at his best out there so far this season for us, and for the most of the season, he's taken on a lot for us. And he basically went on to say that he basically battles against the best player on the opposing team each day. But Darius, before we get into some of the other comments here, what are your thoughts on this? We knew it was coming. Brodie got scratched, and a bit surprising. First time in 10 years that he has been a healthy scratch when healthy, and they want to give him some rest. And it paid off yesterday, and he has not looked good at all this season.
No, he hasn't looked good. And I think it has something to do with something you said in there too. And I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, it's been over 10 years since Brodie was scratched that is not injury related, which is pretty crazy. He's been very consistent, but unfortunately just hasn't been that for the Leafs the last couple of years, or at least 2 years. He was great before that. But something you said in there really spikes my interest. And I was looking at a lot of charts and, who he plays against. TJ Brodie, in the NHL sense, like league wide, has been playing against the toughest competition in the league, and maybe he just shouldn't be. I think we found the problem. Maybe he should be able to take a step back and maybe not be on a different pairing, but the minutes should be managed probably a little more carefully, and against who, because he doesn't look great this season. He's obviously regressing a little bit. That happens with age. We've seen it, right? So maybe his role should be, peeled back a little bit, and that might be the reason why he's being exposed so much, because I still think he is and could be a useful defender even at his age and his skill set right now. I just don't know if his usage is to his the best of his ability. I guess like they should be managing his minutes a little more effectively, because like I said, he is playing against some of the toughest competition night in, night out in the NHL, and I think we might have found the issue as to why he hasn't been that great this year.
Yeah, and Sheldon Keefe said it as more of a positive, but when you think of it in that way, maybe he shouldn't be, like you mentioned, because that way, and maybe he'll be able to play a little bit better here. And you're looking at this, and again, we're not trying to necessarily hate on TJ Brodie, but here is a look at the most difficult defensive minutes in the league, and you kind of just mentioned it, Darius. 50-plus hours of computing counting. You see TJ Brodie is right there at towards the bottom at negative 2.0. Like he's been up against the best players, and obviously a part of that is because of his age as to why he hasn't been performing as well. Part of that, obviously, tough matchups aren't the easiest thing in the world, and also there's something to be a little bit to be said about the Leafs don't have great defensemen, so he doesn't really have Morgan Riley is obviously phenomenal, but other than that, and you look at his stats, this season he's still putting up points. He has more points than he did last season, but he hasn't scored a goal. And his defense, which is what you have TJ Brodie for, has fallen off a lot here. And overall, I don't know. They needed to do it. Who knows how long he will be on be a healthy scratch for? They won 7-3 yesterday without him. Again, the Capitals aren't the best team, but who knows? Maybe they give him a week. Maybe they give him a few days. I can't imagine it's going to be a long time permanent thing. But they have Benoit. They have other guys who can step up.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be too long, right? I think with Lyubushkin coming back from illness too, probably this weekend, I think they figured out a way to get him back in the lineup. And I think they're going to juggle the lineup, especially on the defensive side, a lot in the next couple of games, because I think we only have 13, 14 games till the end of the season, and I really don't think they found something that is cemented for the playoffs yet. So I feel like they're going to play with a lot, and I'm sure Brodie's going to get back in the lineup for sure. He's not going to be a scratch for too long, but I think taking this game off was a good thing for both the Leafs and him. And if you look at like the game score impact card, which we've been looking at for Brody the last couple games. If you look at last night's, your worst defensive players are not a defenseman, and it's usually Brody, and maybe whoever he's playing with was brought down a little bit. It wasn't that last night. You had forwards there, which, I mean, somebody has to be last, right? It was a very good game from the team overall, but you have forwards at the bottom, which is a lot better in my eyes. So we'll see what happens when he comes back in, who he's playing with. But, I think it was a good thing yesterday, and nice to see Simone Benoit get back in the lineup too the last couple of games, because we got to mention him at least once a video. He's been everything for the Leafs. So.
Exactly. We're on the train. You see the train right there. And let us know what your thoughts are on all that. Now let's move on to some injury updates. An interesting Max Domi, I guess, kind of fact that could lead into potentially Mitch Marner's availability going forward. But let's start with Tyler Bertuzzi. I saw a lot of fans on Twitter were very upset when Tyler Bertuzzi was, I guess, supposedly sat and benched for 13 minutes in yesterday's game, despite how good he's been. But he was actually feeling under the weather, which is why he didn't play the first half of the first period, Sheldon Keefe says. So he's sick. He essentially got sick, I guess, mid-game, or maybe he wasn't feeling great before the game and then ultimately got more ill as the game went on. So he should be good. He'll be obviously back, and we'll get your thoughts on that in a second. But let's look at the Max Domi thing. And Max Domi is in the Marner role while Marner is out. The people wanted it. They demanded it. Sheldon finally relented in game 68. Max Domi's looked very, very good. I mean, he's looked very solid so far throughout the whole season after the first few games. But what are your thoughts on the Domi situation? I guess how it pertains to Mitch Marner. We have not heard an update on Mitch Marner yet, and it doesn't look like he'll be back in the near future, at least.
Yeah, very interesting. And to go back to the Bertuzzi thing, one thing I saw yesterday that was pretty funny is he wasn't feeling well leading up to the game, and Keefe was looking at options to take him out of the lineup just because he wasn't feeling well, and the only person that could activate on the current roster was TJ Brody. So they figured that was not a great idea, just to give him the mental rest and keep him out of the game. So he ended up playing, and he had a great game too, and he ended up scoring. So good for Bertuzzi. And it's a good thing that it wasn't anything other than him being ill that kept him out and benched, right? So that's good to see. And to go back to the Marner and Domi thing, doesn't look like Marner's going to come back anytime soon. They're keeping it kind of quiet. Again, that whole thing we talked about day to day from being day to day, we have no idea what that means. He could be out another week, another two. His injury is definitely not, they said it's mild, but that injury in itself is definitely not something to play with. So we'll have to keep eyes on that. We'll see when he comes back, but no real news on that. I guess he'll be out another week or so. But if you look at Max Domi, he's kind of moving into that Mitch Marner spot with Austin Matthews on that top line and on the first power play unit. And I mean, he had a career high assist night yesterday. He looks great in that role, and all season his point totals, I mean, he has come in and done exactly as advertised. He's going to be a great setup guy. He's going to chip in for maybe 50 points on the year, which is great from a quote unquote third liner. And he's going to bring that toughness just like his dad, right? He has a little bit of that too, right? He's not exactly like his dad, but he brings that element. So he's been great for the Leafs this year, and I would hope that they look at re-signing him, and hopefully they don't overpay or anything like that, but I would definitely look at re-signing him for a couple of years. I think he could be a great player for the Leafs, but I wonder if he's kept on power play one, even if Marner comes back, if they can find a role for him there. But until Marner does come back, I think he's found a home on that power play one, and it's nice to see because he's earned it. He's playing very well.
Yeah, a lot of fans, and I mean, I think both of us would agree. Maybe look to extend Domi and Tyler Bertuzzi. They both seem to be fitting the team structure pretty well there. But yeah, no update on Marner really. Bertuzzi should be good for next game. And yeah, Max Domi, glad that we signed him and we have him because he is filling in well in Mitch Marner's absence. But that'll wrap up the video. Let us know what your thoughts are on that in the comment section down below, and we'll see you tomorrow.